Hi, State Senator Terri Bonoff at the Capitol. This week, the governor released his budget. I don't know if you knew this, but in our Constitution, it says the governor has to release his budget on a particular day. And so he did it on the day he was supposed to, January 27th. So there's a lot of reaction. Some people, like this piece, that piece. You have to remember that the governor puts forward his budget and then the legislature actually begins to do its work. We set our own budget targets, we hear our bills, and then at the very end of session, we work with the governor and we compromise and discover where we're the same and where we're apart. And so, for example, the governor put a significant amount of the total dollars in the E12 budget area. And so, of course, I'm always a big supporter of education. Now I wear that other hat where I'm higher ed chair, and I'm like, should they have gotten so much and compared to higher ed? But let's take a look at where the governor thought it was important to put those dollars. And number one, the governor put the biggest chunk of money around universal pre-K programs in our public schools. Now, for some time, I've been an advocate of early childhood education, but really more in a targeted way. Specifically, I have focused on early learning scholarships for 3- and 4-year-olds in families where there's the most poverty. And so putting our resources towards the universal pre-K, then I do admit I get a little bit concerned that, in fact, are we spending our dollars where they're most needed? I mean, who can argue with how great it would be if every student had, pre-K education? And so I think that's a laudable goal. I'm just more looking at, okay, in a limited resource capacity, where should we target our dollars? And so to that end, I'm more for the scholarships to the low-income families, and in addition then using some of the dollars that might free up in that scenario to making sure that our post-secondary students, also those in particular most at risk of not either completing or having access to quality higher education, that we have the resources to serve those students. So it's funny, I do agree with the governor that the students on the very early end and the very, end of our K-12 spectrum are the ones, in fact, that might be most at need. And if you think about our Constitution, where we say every Minnesota student has the right to equal education, we've always thought of that as a K-12 responsibility. Well, in today's time, is that realistic? Or perhaps should we go back and revisit what the meaning of that Constitution says and say that really every student from E through post-secondary has the right to an equal education? And those are the kinds of healthy debates that we should be having this session. And so I look forward to that dialogue. I presented two pretty large, significant pieces of legislation this week. I was able to present our used to be called Pipeline Project, now Earn While You Learn dual education bill in the Jobs Committee. That went very well. In addition, we heard the report that our legislation from last session directed the Department of Labor and Industry to prepare with regard to our early foundational work on this apprenticeship dual education concept. And so it was a lengthy committee hearing. People were very engaged and very supportive, and we'll complete that work early next week. In addition, I introduced the equity crowdfunding legislation, which people seem to be fascinated by, but then the Department of Commerce threw up a lot of red flags saying that we weren't providing enough regulatory framework, and so we agreed to work with the folks in Commerce, and we'll be doing that so that hopefully we can come to some agreement and have Minnesota join the 14 other states that have enacted this kind of legislation. So we know it can be done, and we hope that we'll be able to get that done this session. We had a great first town hall in Minnetonka. We'll be having our last town hall, our B-side town hall, or A-side, excuse me, in Plymouth next Tuesday. So if you didn't get to come last Tuesday in Minnetonka and you live in Plymouth, or you, as a Minnetonka person, want to come join us, please do. It'll be at 6:30 Plymouth City Hall. The Plymouth mayor and city council members actually came and visited me at the legislature this past week to talk about their legislative priorities. It's always great when you folks from the district come to see me in St. Paul. Our door's always open, although it's difficult to get around the Capitol these days. But you got to see that for yourself to believe how bad it really is. Thanks very much for tuning in.